Zacharias.
Are we
We were
gonna
calling him Zacharias. Zacharias, my brother.
are we gonna wait for more people, or should I just start reading?
I'll tell you. You don't have to ask me. Okay, that's what part of being scribe is. You're just gonna wait until you're called upon. Okay. All right. You're doing great, but I have to teach you as we go. Okay. All right. Anybody else in the chat? Anybody else here? Can you guys see me okay? Can you hear me? Let me know if it's clear. All right. Just copy this new copy this link and send it. I hate to be wasting time, but all right, we're back on technical difficulties. All right, here we go. So going back to what we're talking about. I don't know if you guys heard me. I said we're going to be going into the laws concerning and judgments concerning women, so that we can understand as men what our responsibility is, and our job and our duty is as a husband, a father, a guide, teachers. Before we live up to any other title, let us live up to the title of men. So going into some notes that I took concerning the laws concerning women. I'm going to go over these now. The first one was civil. Civil rights and inheritance rights. Civil and inheritance rights concerning the women. And let me just close this out because that's probably slowing my computer down. 1 second. Apologize for the technical difficulties. We're going to be ironing out these kinks as we go. Okay. All right. Property inheritance. So in the landmark case of the daughters of Zelophehad, a new judgment was established when Moses inquired of God, when the daughters of Zelophehad came to Moses to plead their case that their father died without sons. And he was not of the men that rose up against Moses and against God in the matter of Datan and Korach, right? Korach, right? Is how it's pronounced, Korah, right? So they said our father was a good man. He didn't side with those that were against God. So in this case, could the land be given to us as an inheritance? Well, he said, what do we do, rather say? And so it was answered, God answered Moses, and it said, if a man died without a son, that his inheritance should be passed to his daughters, right? I don't think we're going to go over that because that's basically the gist of it. And these women, I want to point out that if you read that chapter, and you'll find it in Numbers chapter 27, verses 1 through 8, if we go over that, you will find that the woman, yes, good point, Zacharias, because that was established that we should marry within our tribes. At this point, it was crucial because as the lot was to be given out in the time of Joshua to the tribes, the more land was to be given to the greater tribes, the greater number of people, and the smaller land was to be given to the lesser number of people of the tribes, right? So larger tribes got larger lands, which is fair and just. And as that was the case, if a man had daughters only and she married a man of another tribe, then the inheritance that was given to his daughters would then transfer to another tribe because their son would belong to the tribe of their father. And when it's time to give out an inheritance, he would get the inheritance from the lot of his father's tribe and the lot of his mother's tribe. And so how would we keep it within the same tribe unless they married within their tribe, right? And so that was crucial for not only the maintaining tribes, right? And so that we had each tribe married within each other, so they would maintain the tribe itself, but also to maintain the land and the lot that was given to them, right? So that it had both what are the right words? It was a just order that was set up so that it be not transferred to another tribe, but it was also to keep it within the tribe so that the lots would not be lost and a tribe wouldn't lose its inheritance. Okay, so another point that I like to make is that the daughters of Zelophehad, had we lived, because I think this is misconstrued as certain men teach the law, as we have heard throughout the years from other teachings and teachers, that we all know that it's a male-orientated society that God set up, and mainly because he created man in his image to be in charge. And we're going to go into that a little bit later, that dominion was also transferred to the woman. She does have dominion as well over the earth because they were one. I'm going to go a little bit into that and explain that to support the statement that I just made, because some of us might be saying, nah, man, the women were created as a help, and she doesn't have that dominion that we have. We know that he created us in his image and not women in his image. But before I get into that part to explain that about the dominion, I also want to note that because the men were in charge, Adam being here first, right, and in the image of God, having that jurisdiction over Eve because she came from him, just like the mother has jurisdiction over the children because they came from her, right? We touched on last week. That is a responsibility that Adam has as a guide to lead in the proper manner. And we didn't lead with a fist, with an iron fist, metaphorically speaking, of course. Men didn't have to exert our power over women forcefully, because my brother Shama was talking about a man of value, right, earlier today. A man of value knows how to control himself, not just concerning, concupiscence or his lustful desires, but his temper and his treatment towards not only people outside, because that's what we teach all the time, right? The law is about how you teach people and how you love your neighbor like you love yourself, and that the way we treat people and each other as a nation, counts. But it starts at home and how you treat each other at home, right? So, man, I ain't apologizing to my kids, man. They do what I say. But there's no parenting one-on-one class to teach a parent how to be a perfect parent. Right? There's no perfect father. There's no perfect mother. We all have faults. We all grow up with faults. We're still battling with generational curses, which, by the way, is not a crutch. It's up to us to break those generational curses, right? And so, yes, we could say all day, it is a proven fact that, the American black male has a higher adrenaline excretion than, because it is an hormone that is excreted in the body because of stress levels. And the black American male has a higher adrenaline secretion or in his body than any other, not only man, but any other black man on the earth, because of generational curses, the Willie Lynch syndrome, and things that happen to their fathers during slavery in the United States, in the antebellum South, right? So it's not just from that travel of the ones that came through that transatlantic slave trade from the banks of West Africa to the Caribbean and the eastern seaboard of the United States, but also to their children and generations after them, and even the women, because this was something that was bred and something that was practices that were kept. How women were watched, had to watch, black babies being used as for target practice, right? While they were pregnant, was translated to the child that was in her stomach, because the baby feels whatever the mother is feeling, right? That there were heinous acts that the males were forced to commit with their own mothers in front of their fathers, which created a hatred for their own children, the mother hating her own son, but still feeling sorry for him at the same time, which created a hatred for her own husband because he didn't risk his life to try to stop it. And this was a generational thing that was passed down. And so it's hard to say, oh, well, you don't have to follow it, because it's something that you have to battle with daily. But I also believe that, which I could proudly say, looking at my skin complexion, it ain't hard to tell that, I'm not black, and my ancestors were not in the antebellum South in this country. But I could proudly say that my family was not even here during that time. My father is a first-generation immigrant from Germany, and I have family roots to prove that my family migrated from Israel to Spain to Portugal and then to Germany. Over 7 to 8 generations ago, before my father, right? But I can also say that my father, who his family practiced Judaism, and his parents died, and half of his family were killed in the concentration camps in Germany during the Holocaust. I can also say I watched my father's strength to break those traumas that he experienced when he was only 8 years old and his whole family died, right? Or most of his family died, right? And he grew up living on his own, right? In foster, or in a home at first, and then moved to the United States at 16 and lived on his own. And he showed me and taught me that there's no such thing as a crutch, regardless of what has happened to us, regardless of what has happened to our ancestors. The first step in breaking it is the education of what you had been through. That's the first step. And then once we are educated and we understand what we went through, and we accept, like Chief Mikhail taught today, that it is not because of someone else's fault, but it is our fault from our sins and the sins of our fathers, why we went through these things and why our parents suffered these things. Then we start to take responsibility and hold ourselves accountable for the way that we act and the way that we treat people and the way that we run our households. And we can't use it as a crutch. And until you face the man in the mirror, you will always be running from those traumas. You will always be running and in denial, and that stubbornness and that pride will continue to grow. And that is where blaming and complaining comes from. Because our fathers, if we read the book, even though they were slaves that were not humble, they came into the wilderness expecting everything, complaining that they didn't have water, complaining. They were actually starving. People might look and read and say, man, they had a right to complain. They were actually starving. They had no water. But you know what God was trying to teach us? That the reality of it is, they should have been so thankful that God delivered them with his miracles out of Egypt, from the house of bondage, from under the hand of Pharaoh, that we shouldn't have had anything to complain about. We shouldn't have been counting what we didn't have. We should have been so thankful for everything that we had in that moment. And the more I read the book, I think that God opened my eyes and touched my heart and changed the way that I think. I had to be homeless before I started to understand what it meant to look out for the poor. I had to be the stranger before I understood what it meant. I've been a stranger my whole life. I ain't grow up with white friends. I know what it's like to be the stranger. So when the book says, you shall not oppress the stranger, for you know the heart of the stranger, the problem is that most of us have never been a stranger. You've never been in an environment where you're the only one of your kind. So you forget, or you never learned what it's like to not make someone feel left out, because you have never been in the situation where you were left out. And if you have been in that situation, if you ever been incarcerated, if you ever been in a situation where you were the only one of your color or your kind, shame on you. This is the point where I could say you. For all who have not taken into consideration how you felt when you were in those shoes. But we have all made mistakes. We have all been subject and victim to our traumas. And that doesn't mean that you can't change that. We don't have to use it as a crutch. We don't have to run from the mirror and not address the problem is inside of us, not them. And I keep saying this, and I will say it every week until we get it. The law does not say they shall and they shall not. The law says thou shalt and thou shalt not. And it's up to us to take the responsibility to do what God commanded of us. I do what God commanded of me. As I read thou shalt, the law is talking to me, and you take responsibility for and hold yourself accountable for doing what the law says to you when you hear it and when you read it. And it says thou shalt, and it's talking to you. And if we all work on ourselves, we could be better together. And it starts at home. You don't expect your wife to work on what she got going wrong with her, and you're not working on what you got going wrong with you. Oh, ye man. Because in order for any relationship to work, both parties have to be working on each other in order to work on the relationship together. You have to work on themselves, not on each other. You can't fix your wife. She can't fix you. But you work on yourself. She work on herself, and then you can work on the relationship. And I learned this through trial and error. And the only thing that helped me was I had to humble myself. When after 7 years, when I didn't think nothing was going wrong and I thought we're doing good, my wife came to me and told me that she felt unhappy the entire time. She just didn't share it with me. And sometimes they're afraid to talk to us because we didn't create that safe space for them to feel safe. And that's the point I want to make with Zelophehad's daughters. They felt safe enough. They felt protected. They felt secure that they could come and talk to Moses and stand up for what they knew was rightfully theirs. They didn't say, I live in a society that we will be overlooked. They didn't say, I live amongst a people that will tell me to shut up and mind my place. They said, we feel comfortable enough that we could speak up to Moses because this is our right. And we're going to stick up for what our fathers was passing down, that he didn't have any sons and we're all he has. So if we keep our mouths shut, then this thing dies and our father's inheritance goes to someone else. And our father died in vain, even though he feared God. What about our fathers, your father, my father, of the good things that they taught us? Are we going to die? Are they going to die in vain? Are we going to die not upholding what they fought for and what they taught us? Because my father taught me to stand up for those that don't have a voice. He marched in the civil rights movement when he came to the United States. He met Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and fought for both, nonviolent, and if it called for it, violent protests as well. Whatsoever the case was, he said. I said, which one do you stand for? And he said, well, whatever it calls for, the situation at hand. He went to jail for it, and he fought for it, and he gave up his life for it. And when I asked him why, he said, because when I came from Germany and I saw what was going on to the blacks in the United States, I said, who would I be to watch what happened to my parents and my family and not stand up for people in this country that's going through the same thing? So I'll be a monkey's uncle if I sit here and bite my tongue and don't say nothing and don't stand up for what's right. And anybody that know me know I ain't gonna bite my tongue. I ain't gonna hold it back. I'm gonna speak the truth, and I'm gonna speak what the book say, and I'm gonna stand up for what's right. And if you don't like me, if you don't like it, you can try to kill me, but God ain't gonna let you get it off, because I'm supported by him and the principles of what he teaches and his ways and his laws. So I had to learn to humble myself, and I had to learn to listen to my wife, because if you love your wife, then you should want to understand her, because that's what love is, when you try to understand the other person. Love is not about what she's supposed to do for you. Love is also about what you are supposed to do for her. It's not her job to protect you. It's not her job to make you feel safe. It's not her job to speak up for what's right in your house. It's your job. It's not her job to provide for you. It's your job to provide for her. And if you're coming up short on any one of those and you don't feel no kind of way about it, and you're not addressing that problem, you're running from your responsibility as your number one title, a man. Anything outside of that is American. Anything outside of that is the nations, the ways of the nations. It's not the ways of Israel. It's not the ways of Abraham. For surely not the ways of God. I'm going to show you in the book. I ain't just going to talk. I'm going to show you in the book. So that could be found in Numbers 27, verses 1 through 8. Zelophehad's daughters must have felt secure and protected that they could come and speak up for their rights. Because any woman that doesn't feel protected feels like she can't say nothing. She's going to keep her mouth shut and she will eventually flee. She's not going to feel secure in her environment. She's not going to feel safe in her own home. And if you don't take the time to listen to her, you will never know, because she's going to have her mouth shut. That's something I learned from experience, and I had to humble myself. I always say this: don't ask me if I love my wife. Ask my wife if I love her. And look, we ask her right now, oh, wife, do I love you? Yes. They can't hear you.
Yes.
And I can know that, and I can tell you that she loves me too. And that not because I cater to her, because I still run my house according to the laws of God. But there's nothing wrong with allowing her to be heard. You can hear her and let her finish. Even if halfway through she's getting emotional and she's saying some stuff that don't align with the law, let her finish. And when you're done, don't get emotional. Don't get riled up. Don't get fiery. Just tell her, well, here's why, even though I know you feel strongly about this, why God doesn't support those feelings. Because let me show you in the book what it says. Let me show you why your opinion on this does not match up with God's principles of righteousness, of morality. And you show her in the way that a guide that cares about their loved one would guide them. Just like you might have taken time to explain to your child certain things, you have to deal with your wife that way. And women don't get offended if I say it that way. Because sometimes it's the husband's job to treat their wives as their child. Why? To remind them that you got to love your wife the same way you would love your child. Chief Shammah said he heard something today from a woman who he called a wise woman, and I would have to agree, who told him that treat your wife the way you want your daughter to be treated. You wouldn't allow a man to treat your daughter that way, then why are you treating your wife that way? And some of us don't have daughters. But I know if I did, I for surely wouldn't let my daughter be treated that way. And if I ain't going to let my daughter be treated that way, look, it ain't got to be my daughter. I've stood in between my brother when he was beating on his wife. And he had a gun in his hand. Yeah. Y'all know who I'm talking about. I ain't got to say no names for those that know. I ain't say that ain't my business. That's his wife. No. Because if I love my brother like I love myself, then I should love my sister like I love myself. And my brother's wife is my sister. I don't want her. I want justice. I want what's right. I want what God wants. I want unity. And if you can't do that, then you don't stand for what God stands for. You don't stand for what God is teaching the men to stand for. I don't care what your problems are. Talk it out. Like I told my wife, she grew up in a house without a father. I grew up in a house without a mother. We're not going to let that happen to our children. Any problem we got, we're going to work it out. No, you ain't leaving. And I'm not leaving either. We're going to work it out. But you can't do that if you won't hear, if you won't listen to her. Because she won't be able to tell you what she's feeling and what the problems are. And then you won't be able to rectify it according to law, because you won't know what's bothering her. Just shut up and do what I say. That's not what we taught. That's not the society that God laws teaches us. that the woman have to shut up and be silent, or else the daughters of Zelophehad would have never been able to speak up. Don't tell me it ain't in the book. It's in there. I'm going to show you. Vows and consent. A woman's father or husband could void her verbal vows if they heard them and objected to them immediately. However, if they remained silent, the vow was legally binding. If a daughter or a wife made a vow and her father or her husband heard it, he could disannul, he could annul the vow and say, nope, I ain't standing. But if he didn't say nothing when he heard it, then the vow stands, and that's between her and God now. And she have to hold that. Why husbands should be annulling vows left and right if their wife is that type to be making vows is because women are emotional. Today, apparently, men are emotional. I don't know which one is more, men or women. Men are like emotional wrecks. You can't talk to them. They can't calm down. Look, it's not a crutch for that you a Levite, that you got a bad temper, that nobody could talk sense into you, that when you in the height of your emotion, you can't calm down. That's called pride. That's not the temper of a Levite. You know what the temper of the Levite was? You know what? You know how many days, huh? You know what happened when Lewi and Simeon went to kill all the men of Shechem? They waited for the third day. That wasn't emotional. That was calculated. And that temper of Lewi, now I ain't going to deal with our sister as a harlot. We're going to wait until when they're in agony and pain after the third day of after them being circumcised. We're going to set up a plan. Yeah, Abba, let them join with us. Yeah, they could have our sister as long as they get circumcised. And they knew exactly what they was doing. Jacob just didn't want to stink among the inhabitants of the land because it was looked at as like they set him up. But so what? You set up our sister. That's how they felt. The book don't say who was right or wrong, whether it was Jacob or his sons. But I'll tell you what, we do have as evidence, God let it go down. He didn't stop them. He didn't let Jacob find out and stop them. So that shows what God upheld to be right. But the point is that just because Lewi had the temper, he didn't let it get the best of him. He waited and they calculated. So it wasn't about being emotional. It wasn't about being in the height of your anger. Ain't nothing gonna stop me. Look, high value men also don't make any decisions in the height of their emotion. None, not one. High value man knows how to control himself, right? So he knows how to not only control his lust, he knows how to control his temper. And even if you know that you have a hard time controlling your temper, you can control your actions during your temper. Don't make a move until you calm down. Don't make a decision until you calm down. Don't respond. That's why it's called responsibility, your ability to respond. So as men, we have the greatest responsibility. We're in charge. So you have to control you have to master your ability to respond. And it's not hard because God made us in his image. That's why the title of this video is called Adam, our first title, created in the image of God. So there is no crutch. There is no excuse. There is no complaining. There is no blaming. The only one to blame is me. Looking in the mirror, me. The only one who can control me is me. You can talk to me, you can counsel me, but unless I control my emotions and my temper and my anger and my actions and my tongue, all that wise counsel in the world will elude me. It will right over my head. And then you're just acting out of foolishness and pride. And there's no wisdom in that. So if you have a brother that loves you and is telling you not to make a decision, you should listen. Because it's not something that you have to do right now or else the world is going to be over. None of our fathers moved that way. And we saw the ones that did, when Rehoboam didn't hearken to the counsel of the elders who were his father's counselors, but hearkened to the young men that he grew up with, we see how it affected not only him, but the entire nation. So just know that your actions will trickle down, not only upon you, but upon the household, upon the congregation, upon the nation. And then when you look to blame your wife or your children for something, just know it's because we were a poor guide. We were not a good teacher. We were not adhering to the principles of wisdom ourselves. And you know what that does to the children when they see that? Later on, God forbid, they end up turning away from this way of life and we get angry with them and blame them and say, I taught you better, you know better. No, I taught you better with words. But my actions showed you that whenever I get ready, whenever I get in the heights of my emotions, whenever somebody or some situation rubs me the wrong way, I can break the law, forsake the law, and keep my mouth shut and not stand up for the principles of righteousness and not execute the judgments that I am able to execute in my power in the land of our enemies in these times. But I could keep it to myself. I could elude the responsibility. I could throw it off of me and say, it's not mine right now. It don't belong to me. Then you can't be a leader. Not only can you not lead a people, you can't lead your own house. Because you're going to say it ain't my responsibility. I don't feel like dealing with it right now. You don't have that luxury, oh man. You don't have the luxury of withdrawing from your responsibility, your ability to respond to every situation as a head, as a leader, as him that God gave dominion. Legal equality for injury. The principle and judgment of an eye for an eye applied equally to women. If a man injured a woman, the penalty was identical as if he had injured a man. A woman take a man's eye out, she got to get her eye taken out. If a man took a woman's eye out, he got to get his eye taken out. There's equality there in that judgment. When men strive together, this is Deuteronomy chapter 25, one with another, and the wife draw near for to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smiteth him, and put it for her hand, and take him by the secrets. If the woman grabbed the man by his genitals, protecting her husband while her husband's fighting the other man, then thou shalt cut off her hand. Thine eye shall not pity her. A woman attempts to defend her husband in a fight by attacking the other man's genitals. This passage instructs the community to cut off her hand and show no pity. In ancient Israelite culture, this severe punishment was aimed at protecting a man's reproductive capabilities, which was essential for not only maintaining a family line, but also the continuity of the covenant. It's bigger than you. It's always bigger than you. It's not that she got to get her hand cut off because she grabbed your genitals. It's because of the family line and the continuity of the covenant with God's people. That man has the capability to produce generations. And that's why it was a severe punishment. It's always bigger than you. What kind of responsibility, what kind of accountability is the man that says, but what about me? What about my feelings? What about your feelings? You in charge. What you mean, what about you? We ain't learned nothing from our teacher? Huh? He said, hey, he's hot, burning up, sweating. Hey, what happened, women? You cold back there? You cold, wife? You cold, wife? All right, turn off the air. And he will get his little towel and wipe his face off and just sweat. And you'll see his garment wet with sweat. And he ain't gonna peeling off clothes either. You know why? Because he was a man. That's why. Because he will suffer just to prove an example of righteousness, which is to put the people before himself, even his own wife. He didn't say, well, she got to worry about me. What about me, wife? I'm hot right now. Get a blanket. Did he tell her that? Come on, put it in the chat. Did he say that? Let me put it there for you. No, he never did. No, never. And I know Iyar right there saying that's right. Come on, man. He's our teacher, man. Is he our teacher? Is he our father? Because he called me his son. He treated me like such. I'll tell everybody that I tell about him that never met him. That's my second father right there. I'll never have another relationship like that with any other human being on earth ever. A father, a teacher, a second father, and a best friend all in one. It won't exist. Just like I had to explain to some of my brethren, my brothers and sisters, we can never understand what the woman feels when she loses a husband. There is no relationship like a husband and a wife comparable to any other relationship on earth. And God tried to teach us that when he taught us about Adam and Eve, which we're going to go into also. Let's go into some more of these laws. Basic marital rights. A husband was legally, rights, mind you. These are rights. These are judgments, but they are rights for women. A husband was legally forbidden from diminishing his wife's food, clothing, or conjugal rights, even if he took a second wife. What are conjugal rights? They are the mutual rights and privileges that arise from marriage. So rights for a husband and wife, including cohabitation, companionship, affection, and sexual relations. These rights imply a duty to share a life together, and in some contexts, even an obligation for intercourse between spouses. While traditionally legal, modern interpretations often treat them as voluntary, though some legal systems still allow petitions for restitution of conjugal rights. So a lot of men talk about what are conjugal rights and say, well, you gotta be allowed for intercourse. It has to be allowed. She has to consent to it, as you do. But, most of the time, the men always want the intercourse. And sometimes it's not about just that, because also down here it says affection and support under the definition of conjugal rights. Mutual emotional support, comfort, and affection. And I know some men out there are saying, see, it says mutual. It says mutual. She got to support me emotionally and comfort me and show me affection. Look, you ain't alone. I like affection. And I had to tell my wife, this is my love language. I like when you touch me. When I'm angry, just come up and put your hand on me and it pacifies me. Sometimes she do, sometimes she don't. But when she don't, I say, I done told you my love language. You didn't touch me, so don't get mad when I get mad. You're supposed to pacify me. What you sound like, man? What kind of weak man you sound like? You don't sound like one that's in charge. You don't sound like a leader that put other people before himself. You sound weak. And I have to dig myself. So I say, you know what? I already told her that. If she does it, cool. If she don't, fine. It's my job to make her feel secure. It's my job to make her feel supported. It's my job to make her feel safe. And yes, God created her as a help and a support to me. But I ain't going to be looking to point that out all the time to her, and I'm not doing my part on what I'm supposed to be doing as a husband. Because we like to point out other people's faults all the time. But when it comes to looking at ourselves in the mirror, we run from that reflection. And again, I got to remind myself and I got to remind everybody. The law says thou shalt and thou shalt not they shall and they shall not. So regardless of even with your own wife, if she's not doing what you would like, communicate. But don't bash her for it. And sometimes don't communicate. Just eat it, man. And do your job. Live up to the title of a man. And we have good examples. My father was a great man. I'll never be able to walk in his shoes. I'll never be able to walk in the shoes of my teacher, Chief Elazar. There are men of a generation that is beyond our strength because every generation gets weaker and weaker. But I know I could strive for it. And I could be the strongest man in my generation as they were the strongest men in their generation. And I'm not going to give myself no crutches because you can't be that. You can't be the strongest. You can't be the leader. You can't be the head. You can't be a good guide with a crutch. You can't be nothing. You're handicapped. So what else? Modern and legal standing. Many protection for captives. A man who took a female captive in war was required to give her a full month of mourning her parents and her family before he married her as a free woman. If he later decided that he did not want her to wife anymore, then he had to set her free and was strictly forbidding from selling her as a slave. Because even though you first took her as a captive, when you married her, the law is teaching us that she became free. And she also became equal to a free individual. Another thing I want to talk about, equal. Who thinks that when Adam made Eve, he made her inferior? Anybody think like that? Lesser than. Of a lower status, of a lower quality. If so, how could she be a help? Now ask yourself this. When you go for a job, right? When you get a job and you're going for a management position, right? You're going for the CEO's assistant, the executive assistant of the CEO, the guy that run the company. You think they put the lame person, the person that knows the least to be that job? That person got to work their way up through the ranks of the company and learn the business before they could be qualified. Or they have to have been another CEO's, another company leader's assistant in order to have that leadership quality to be able to be equal, because the assistant also counsels the head, just like all kings had counselors. So if she's going to help him, because that's what an assistant does, if she's going to be able to help him, she has to also be of the same wit. She has to also have the same capabilities, the same inner potential. Yeah, potential. Because your woman's only going to be as strong as you guide her to be. They are naturally the weaker vessel, just like a rib is the weakest part of your body, which she was made from. Right? But it's our job to be strong. The man bears the infirmity of the entire house. But don't forget, the woman is the pillar. I read in one book where he likened the woman to the tent peg, where the tent peg is what fastened the tent to the ground. The tent peg holds the house, the household, the family to the foundation. The foundation is the law and the guidance of the man. And it's the woman's job to hold the entire family to that foundation, to fasten them to it. But if you're constantly making her feel inferior and reminding her that she's inferior, you're not allowing her to live up to that responsibility. And then you get mad at her when she don't follow it and the kids don't follow it. But if you look more to her as having that capability and that her role is actually to be the tent peg and the pillars of the house that hold up the roof and the foundation that you built, then maybe she will start to step up to the plate. But she has to feel secure first, because women are emotional. There's a few things that as men we will never understand about women, and that's thinking with emotion over logic. My brother took a gender differences class when he was in college. I didn't go to college, but I'm, studied on my own a lot of things, and I learned from a lot of people. And my brother taught me that in this class, they studied the physical makeup of the human brain. And male brains and human brains are exactly the same, except for this one major difference. And the difference is that that women have nerves that connect both hemispheres of the brain. Men do not have that. And women might say, see, I got both of my hemispheres connected and you don't. Well, there's a reason for that. And the reasoning behind it is that there's certain parts of the brain on one side that controls emotion and certain parts of the brain on the other side that controls logic. And men have to have the ability as leaders and as being in charge. God equipped us with the power and the capability to separate logic from emotion. That's why those nerves are not present in the male brain. Look it up for yourself. I encourage everybody to look up everything that I bring. And let me know what you find if it's different. And I forget the name of these nerves, But women don't. Women have those nerves, which make it nearly impossible for her to make a decision based on logic without considering her emotions, right? And sometimes her decisions are all emotionally driven. So what's going on in the chemical makeup or in the what's the word? In the hormonal imbalance of men these days that are causing us to make so many irrational decisions based on emotion over logic. Logic will teach us that you should follow wisdom because wisdom is going to save your life. But the wickedness of man and our sins have driven us to this point. Wisdom coming through the performance of the law. Wisdom is not only you being able to see things clearly when you read the law and being able to explain it to somebody else, but wisdom is being able for you to control yourself and adhere to the principles of wisdom when you are the one being tested. Because acceptable men are tried in the furnace of adversity. So as you go through your daily trials, because wisdom will try you daily to see if she could trust you with her treasures. And as you fail and act in emotion and don't consider her counsels, she will flee from you. Because we are not like Solomon, who God commanded wisdom to remain with us even in our folly. And then you're on your own. And then you start to act foolishly. And then you make rash decisions and foolish decisions that end up hurting you in the end. And anytime you make a decision because you want to hurt someone else, it's the wrong decision. How can you love your neighbor like you love yourself, but your decisions are out of malice to hurt someone else? How can you ever have loved someone and then turn on them to wish them evil or to turn against them? These are the things that we have to consider. I never understood how, and I look at my own house this way that I grew up in. I said to myself, how come my parents just couldn't work it out? And I know some things are beyond me and I don't understand everything. But I said, I will not use this as a crutch and say, well, my father did it and he was a wise man and he was strong. So, hey, sometimes it just got to be the way it is. But I also learned that it's a cultural thing and that his parents died when he was 8. And he didn't have that model to grow up in to learn of how to make a marriage work. He lived in what do you call those? Orphanages from 8 to 16 and then in 16 on his own. So he didn't have that foundation, which I had to understand that I didn't either have the foundation of what it's like, of the dynamic for how to make a relationship work, for what it's like to have a mother in the house. And I learned from other houses. I learned from Chief of Chief Elazar's house. I learned from watching Iyar as a mother, right? The wife of Chief Elazar, which stopped comparing our wives to Iyar, man. She's the last of a dying breed, man. She cut from a cloth that don't exist no more. You expect your wife to be like her, man? I'll be doing my wife a disservice to live up to the principles or the qualities of Iyar, Princess Naomi. Man, you kidding me? She'll never live up to that. It's impossible. God don't command us or demand of us to do things that's impossible. So come on, let's be reasonable. Okay? Divorce rights. A woman could not be discarded without a formal bill of divorcement, which provided her with a legal status that allowed her to remarry. The man can also not lay with the woman that he put away again. He cannot take her back after another man have laid with her, because that land is greatly polluted, is what God said. But I also read where he said, I took you back, O Israel, after you were defiled by the pagan gods that you ran after. And that's the next thing I want to speak about. I used to say, man, I ain't giving in. I ain't gonna weaken myself to humble myself to my wife and say I was wrong. But I'm gonna tell you something I learned from learning to be a good guide and leader from my father and my teacher. I'm going to tell you what I learned. You're not humbling yourself to your wife. You're humbling yourself to God. You're humbling yourself to the principles of wisdom. Because if you're the one with the sight and the other party is blind, then you have to lead them into the light. That's why I said sometimes you got to treat your wife like with the same care that you would care for your child. Because you say to yourself, they don't know better, so it's my job to guide them the right way. Well, sometimes your wife don't know better, especially if she was born and raised in America and in a house where there may not have been a family dynamic, where there may not have been quote unquote relationship goals, right? Of things that we see online. You know, and especially if you and her are being driven by what you see on social media. You have to counter that, and you need the book to do that. And you need to stay on yourself to do that, not on her. You work on yourself. One of my boys told me, man, he don't live this way of life. And his marriage ain't work. And he told me afterward. He said, man, the best way that for you to guide your house, he said, your wife and children included. He said, just walk the walk. You don't even have to talk. He said, you just walk the walk and they will follow. But if you do all the talking and you ain't walking it, they ain't following you. And then you're going to be the one to suffer for it later. You're going to blame them. You're going to complain. You're going to say, what about me? Because you're too busy on watching what other people are doing and not holding yourself accountable. What if he doesn't want to give her a bill of divorce, right? But she no longer wants to be married because of abuse. What should she do in that case? That's a good point. And I have come across cases like this before. And my best advice would be to what my teacher said. And I saw where a woman came to him with this same case. She was being abused. And he said, first you turn to God and present the case before God. And then you go to a head in the congregation, the head preferably, and present the case to the head. By the way, no head has the authority to write a bill of divorce for anybody else. Only the man can write a bill of divorce and it be accepted by God. And all matters shall be established by two witnesses. So any man that wrote a bill of divorce and didn't get it signed by two witnesses, that matter was not established, right? You want to show the paper afterwards if you still have it and let two witnesses sign it, then so be it. It could still be established, but we should remember that. So two witnesses have to sign that piece of paper. I don't care if it's on a paper bag from the grocery store or a tissue. It still got to be signed by two witnesses for all matters to be established. And if he don't want to write it, present the case before the head and let the head call a meeting with the husband. And sometimes the head can have influence, or the heads of that congregation could have influence to enforce that the man write a bill of divorcement or talk to and counsel them so that he can be controlled. Yes, because sometimes if a man can't control himself, then he needs to be controlled. And the house and the camp that my teacher came from, you got put in the circle if you didn't adhere to what the judges or the heads or the chiefs, or if you went against the order that was established in an army meeting or in a nation meeting. And the army meeting was men only, and the nation meeting was men and women were able to present their cases to the head. So I don't know, what we're here doing is, we're here trying to uphold the teachings of the house of Chief Eleazar, of our teacher, Chief Eleazar, and we're also upholding the teachings of and the protocol of Nasi Yaakov. I don't know who all wasn't present for the introduction that I do every single week, but in this introduction, I say, giving due respect to the chief men, princes, dignitaries, officers, mothers, and Israel, brothers and sisters, I stand before you this day, Prince Zachariah, a title bestowed upon me by the order of Chief Eleazar ben Lewi ben Dodo, a.k.a. Matitya, father of the house of the Maccabees, my teacher and leader in whose honor I speak and continue the legacy of his name, works, and teachings. His name, works, and teachings, in the name of our God and the holy law given us mouth of his prophet Moshe, reinstituted by and in accordance with the protocol set forth by Nasi Yaakov, head knock of all the Hebrews, teacher, leader, and founder of Ben Isaac in the first Hebrew Israelite congregation in the United States of America, whither we have been exiled because of our sins and the sins of our fathers, whom our God commissioned to bring his people together to the intent that he might open our eyes and give us ears to hear and a heart to perceive, as it is at this day, so that we may keep his commandments, return to him, and repair the breach. I don't know what you think we're here for. To tell about who's right and who's wrong and what about me? That's what we're here for? It ain't about you. It ain't about me. It's about upholding the order that was set forth first by God, then passed to Moshe for the nation, and then reinstituted by Prince Yaakov, Ha-Nasi Yaakov, that God commissioned. If you ever find anybody in the United States calling themselves a Hebrew or Israelite and not just a black Jew, that was started by Prince Yaakov, Nasi Yaakov. Nobody before him was calling themselves a Hebrew or Israelite. Nobody. God woke him up, and he started this thing, and he taught the law the way it was written. And then my teacher took it further and taught us things that God showed him that his teacher didn't teach him. Exactly the way it's written. And he taught us, if you can't show it in the book, don't teach it. If you can't support it with the book, and don't look for little passages in the book to show where you still right, even though it got to match up with the whole book. Are we going to do this thing or are we going to talk about it? Right? So, slander. Okay, let's see. Slander protection. If a husband falsely accused his wife of not being a virgin to avoid a marriage contract, he was fined, flogged, and lost his right to ever divorce her. So far, I'm hearing a lot of protection for the women. I'm hearing a lot of laws that protect the women. It's a pattern that I'm hearing here, where the law. Hey, let me ask you this. Hey, matter of fact, I'm gonna make a statement, and if anybody's gonna challenge this, there is no law from Genesis to Deuteronomy where it says thou shalt or thou shalt not address to a woman. Might have been concerning women, but it was not addressed to a woman. You want to know why? Because even the laws for her menstruation, even the laws for marriage, it was Moses. See, these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves when we read the book. Who is speaking? Who are they speaking to? Where did this take place? And what time era did it happen in? And all the law is Moses speaking to the elders and the heads of the houses of the tribes to bring to the nation. Even at the foot of Mount Sinai, which is Exodus 19 through 24, he called the elders and the heads of the fathers to come near. Because if you do the math, there was about 3 million plus people present that day. About 3 million people, 600,000 men of war, right? They had wives, they had children. That's from age 20 to 50. What about age 1 to 20? And then what about age 50 to 120, which is what they were living to in that time? So roughly about 3 million people. Not to mention the men that were not in war, that were not in the army, that were between the ages of 20 and 50. So roughly 3 million people. If you think that everybody could hear Moses from where he was standing, regardless if there was great acoustics at the foot of Mount Sinai, which there was, that's why he stood there, and it could be heard from far away. There's a reason why he called the elders and the heads of the houses of the tribes to the foot of the mount, because it was going to be the men's responsibility. Read Leviticus 18 and Leviticus 20, which is the laws that teach us about who you can lay with and who you cannot lay with. And tell me anywhere, if you see anywhere where it says a woman should not lay with this man, this kind of man, or this man, or this, it's not in there. It's going to tell you who the men cannot lay with. All the laws were addressed towards men, not women, which tells us this is why we're seeing this pattern about protecting women, because God didn't want us to get it misconstrued that just because it's a male-orientated society, just because it's a male-dominated, a male-governed nation, does not mean that we're not supposed to have a heart for our women. Does not mean that they should not feel safe and secure and free to speak up if they were done wrong. I think we got this thing twisted, man. You call that love? Man, if she don't love me, we ain't talking about you. Here go again. It's always about you. It's always about men making it about themselves. You don't have leadership in you. You not only don't have leadership in you, you don't have man in you. Because men are the leaders that God set over the entire earth. And if you can't consider the ones that he gave you jurisdiction over, you're not fulfilling your responsibility as a leader. As simple as that. I got the book to back this up. Read the law, man. Read the judgments. There's only 4 punishments for women in the judgments. If she committed adultery, if she was betrothed to a man and lay with another man, which is also considered as adultery because it said, because he laid with his neighbor's wife, the other man, right? And then, and if she was the daughter of a priest, right, and she played the whore in her father's house, or if she was not the daughter of a priest, she played the whore in her father's house, meaning she was not given to marriage, but she was laying with a man, doesn't have to be multiple, just one, then she would get stoned. Or if she was the daughter of a priest, she'd be burnt with fire. Right? It's the same thing that Judah said should happen to Tamar when he thought that she was playing the whore. Because remember, they were all had priestly duties in those days. There was no tribe separated for that. They were all able to offer offerings for their own houses, all the sons of Jacob. Right? And then the 4th one is the case of jealousy. When a man's jealous of his wife and she turned aside to another man instead of her husband, and it didn't necessarily have to lay with him, but she just turned aside and went to go be with another man, then he was jealous of her. Then when she drank the bitter water that caused it to curse, then her thighs shall rot and her belly shall swell. What are the punishments for the women? Don't tell me nothing about Leviticus 19 where it says she shall be scourged, because it don't say that in Hebrew. That's what King James put. It says if she was a shifcha, which means that she was a bondwoman slave of another nation, because the women in Israel were called an amah. You can look that up in Exodus. Your manservant and your maidservant was an amah. If she was another nation, it's called a shifcha. And if she was of another nation and she was a slave, a bondservant, and she was betrothed to a husband, but no freedom had been given her, if another man lay with her, then she don't get put to death. See, if a man found her in the field in the other case, where she was free, a free woman, then it was assumed that she was innocent because nobody was around to hear her scream and cry rape. But if she was found in the city, then it was assumed that she consented because she didn't scream. So this teaches that our woman should feel safe enough to scream and cry out if injustice is done to them. That's proof right there that we assume her to be innocent. We don't say, oh, nah, because, the women don't speak up. They might be afraid even if she was in the city. So we can't say that she was raped. No, they say, well, you didn't scream. We make you feel secure and safe here when you're with us in the city. So if you didn't scream, we're going to assume that you consented and you died for that. So that shows that it proves that it was our job to make the women feel comfortable enough to scream and cry out when there was an injustice being done to her. It's the men's job to make the women feel safe. Why didn't you tell me this before, man? You get mad at your woman because she ain't tell you. Maybe you ain't create that safe space. My woman said, I was afraid to tell you. In 7 years, I was afraid to tell you that I was unhappy. I didn't humble myself to my wife. I humbled myself before God to be a better man, to be the leader that he made me, to be the man, the husband, the teacher, the guide. And by the way, if you ain't going to take counsel from a plumber on how to build a house, you ain't going to take counsel from a mechanic on how to, a car mechanic on how to build a building. If you ain't going to take counsel from a seamstress on how to build a car, then why would you take counsel from someone who is not married, has never been married, on how to keep a wife? And if they've been married and it's a woman, I might listen to her because maybe it wasn't her fault. Because it's up to the man to be the leader and the guide, not her. And if it's a man, unless he's humble enough to say, this is where I went wrong, let me show you, let me counsel you, I'm not listening to him. Because you couldn't keep your own. Why would I listen to you? If anything, you could tell me where you went wrong and I could learn from that. That's what we need to learn as men, man. We need to hold ourselves accountable and responsible for our own actions. We have to master our ability to respond. And if a woman was attacked in the open country where a woman could hear her, she was presumed innocent and only the man was punished. It distinguished between consensual acts and rape based on the location and her ability to cry out for help because she felt secure and protected. Seduction of a virgin. If a man seduced an unbetrothed virgin, he was required to pay the bride price and marry her, losing his right to divorce her. You know what's a bride price? The price that her father would set for her to marry his daughter. A dowry. Do you know what I read in one book called The Aid to Bible Understanding? It's a great book, by the way. It said the average bride price was the 1/3 of the average the average farmer's yield or salary, right? And that word salary was not used in our times. That came about in Roman times because they used to pay the Roman soldiers in salt. That's why it's called a salary today. Because salt was precious, because before refrigeration, that's how they preserved food. So it was a currency. So we called it yield, because your yield of your crop was how much money you made that year. Your yield of sheep is how much money you made that year as your sheep increased and your flocks increased. He would give 1/3 of his yearly yield, crop and sheep, and flocks, rather say. You know how much money that is? They said that will be equivalent to if a man made $100,000 a year, that will be equivalent to over $33,000, $34,000 for the price to take a wife. You know why we don't cherish our wives? Because we got her for free. Well, she wasn't no virgin. Yeah, well, you wasn't either. And you wasn't the law don't talk about me, but no, it doesn't. But I did read in the law in the Proverbs where he said that whoredom takes away the heart. And it don't only take away the heart of the woman, it takes away the heart of the man. So we have to understand that we're not coming to the table as these wholesome men that we're expecting this wholesome virgin woman either. You know what you got? You got who God paired you up with that was best for you. And if you don't think God's hand is in everything, I just want to remind you that nothing happens by accident. Nothing happens by accident. I'm going to tell you a quick story. There was a man who he's been with a woman, and then he left this woman to be with a new woman, and we're going to see how God's hand was in this. And he left one lifestyle to the lifestyle of serving God, and the woman that he left was jealous of the new woman and was trying to tell him to leave her. And he was like, nah, you won't listen. And she hired people, right, to put a curse on him, right, so that he would only get excited for her only. And he felt it, and he had to break it. He had to break that. He knew it, that there was something, a problem, and he said, this is not normal. Why am I only getting aroused for her and no other woman? And so he turned to God, and he started doing things that he learned was lawful. And the coincidence part is the same people that she turned to, or the same thing that she turned to put the curse on, end up falling upon her. And a curse came upon her for a whole different reason. And she died. And God's hand was in that because he gave him the woman who he was meant to have. And that other person was trying to block that. Now, people might say, oh, those were two coincidences if you heard the details of the story. But nothing is a coincidence. And we have to be wise enough to see that God's hand is in things. He gave you the woman you deserve. I had to realize that when I was looking at my wife, and I knew, because I prayed and I asked, I said, God, you show me, just send me one good woman, and I will stop being presumptuous. I will stop being promiscuous. I will stop being promiscuous if you just send me one good woman. And at the time, I was putting myself out there, is what they call it, right? You know what I'm saying? And seeing, like, talking or dating like 4 different women. When I met my wife, something just told me this is the one. This is the one. It wasn't no voice. It was just a feeling that said this is the one. And I saw good in her, but I saw a lot of bad things. And I was picking apart at the bad things. Like, man, this and this. I got to try to fix this. You can't fix nobody. And I just knew that, well, if God showed me that that's her, then he must see the good in her, that she's the good woman that I asked for. And if I trust God, then I'm going to go along with it, and I'm going to put the work in. And when I realized it was years later that I can't fix her, that I have to work on myself, then she started to work on herself. And it wasn't until I started to work on myself that she started to work on herself. And now we're in a good place, and we're growing, and we're building. And she's able to correct me, and she's able to accept correction from me. Yes, my wife can correct me. If she's right and she speaks according to what the book says and the voice of wisdom, I'm going to humble myself to that. Not to her, to wisdom, to the law. Sometimes they don't even know it's law. They just say, well, that's not right because, and it just happened to correspond with what the book says. Now that's where you got to know the law, and you got to read the law, and you got to be versed and have that foundation in the law, that when you hear it or the words that align with it, you recognize it. Lest you get mad at her and say, man, I ain't listening to you. And she's trying to talk sense to you and the words of wisdom. So, let's see. Adultery, we already know, we spoke about that. Widows, there was a strict prohibition against mistreating and oppressing widows. God describes as the special protector of the widow, and those who exploited them face severe divine consequences. Maid servants, a father could sell his daughter to be a maid servant under extreme destitution, and the master was required to either marry her or betroth her to his son, granting her the full status of a daughter after that. And she was to be treated as a daughter after that. That's it. Now I'm going to read to you something. These are all things that we can learn directly from the book. Hey, I'm going to tell you like I just finished telling the people. It ain't about you right now. Okay, thank you. And I appreciate your patience. But there's a lot of points here. And we'd be jumping around from chapter to chapter, and I can't waste time. That's why I took notes. So everything we just went over is Exodus 2, Exodus 14, Exodus 2, Exodus 22, concerning the widows, adultery, Leviticus 20, verse 10, Deuteronomy chapter 22, 22, seduction of a virgin, Exodus 22, 15 and 16, Deuteronomy, rape and consent, Deuteronomy 22, 25 to 27. These are all found in the book. Deuteronomy 22, 13 to 21, slander and protection of a woman or of accused who accused his wife of or spoke raised up an evil name against her. Divorce rights, Deuteronomy 24 verses 1 through 4. Protection for captives, Deuteronomy 21 verses 10 to 14. The case of the conjugal rights, which did not only include laying with the woman, but also taking care of her and being an emotional support, a comfort, and affectionate towards his wife. These are all considered the duties of marriage, is what it says in the King James Version. Deuteronomy 25, when a woman draws forth to deliver her husband out of the man that's fighting him and grab him by the secrets. Exodus 21, eye for an eye. Numbers 30, the vows. And then Numbers 27, Zelophehad. So now I want to read to you something else concerning Adam and Eve. Which is some notes that I took. And I'm calling this the true depths to the meanings of the names from Adam to Noah. And I'm just going to read some of this information that I read about the definition of Adam and what I put together from different parts of the book and what this word means. To understand the true depths of the meaning of Adam, we must consider both the source of his existence and the source of his composition. The spirit, directly from the breath of the Most High God, creator of all life, and the flesh, made from the physical foundation of every living thing, the elements that hold the power to contain and transfer spiritual energy through a specific and intricate combination of them. Each element created from nothingness has its own unique set of capabilities that, when combined with insight, action, and reaction, divinely composed in the image of God, formed directly from his hands, infused with his breath to create the life of man. I'm speaking about every single element that was found in the dirt in combination with the spirit that was from God's breath that make up man. That each one of these elements has a different power and a different reaction when you mix them together. Coming together, God formed a man. For both are the two separate components that make up our being, spirit and flesh. Also worthy to note that the Hebrew word Adam is not only a reference to Adam, the first man, but also to mankind in general, as we see in the book of Genesis chapter 5, verse 2, which states, as we read in the KJV, male and female created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. He said he called their name Adam in the day when he created male and female and blessed them. She was right up there with him, neck and neck, shoulder to shoulder, side by side. A help that is equal in capabilities to who she's supposed to help. Opposite, against, not in the sense that she's his enemy, but against as a support to him. But yet, the weaker vessel that he must support and provide for and protect. Created to live in the image of his eternity, having dominion over all things like unto God, having his visual makeup, that all things created might recognize their creator proportionably in man and submit to the power divinely imparted to him. Like when Joshua said, sun, stand thou still upon Mount Gibeah, and thou moon upon the valley of Ajalon, that the sun and moon saw the image of God when he spoke to them. And in his righteousness, they hearkened, because not only was he in the image of God, but he was walking like God. Likewise, in body created with the ability to heal itself, every cell and organ designed to fulfill its function to sustain life for the entire ecosystem of the creature, like unto the earth. Both 3 parts water, 1 part earth. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but the earth is 75% water, more or less, 75 to 80% water, and so is the human body. Adam is an internal and external mirror image of both the Creator and his creation, both God and the earth. The Hebrew word for earth is Adama, which translates literally to man word, towards man. According to the logic of the Hebrew language, which we will explore more in depth throughout the study, the Hebrew letter Hey, when placed at the end of the name of a place or a destination, is understood as to or toward that place. In other words, we say, Hu lek ba Yerushalayma, as it's written in the book. He went to Jerusalem. Now, it would have been sufficient to say, Hu lek be Yerushalayim. He went to Jerusalem. But it's not written that way. Proper Hebrew grammar, which also relates to the logic of the language, says, Hu lek be Yerushalayma. And you can find that in other parts of the book when speaking of a person going to or towards a destination or a place. And it puts the ha, the a, at the end of the name of the place. Also, the same letter hey, when placed at the end of a noun, signifies femininity. Isha, right? Anything that is feminine, nekeba, it has the hey at the end. When he speaks about to her, it's at the end, right? Okay, so, or something that was for the woman or towards the woman, right? Which, when placed at the end of a noun, signifies femininity according to grammatical gender, which is the reference to masculine and feminine words by noun class, where gender attributions occur not solely due to the semantically inherent gender of the character of each noun, meaning the word has feminine or masculine attributes, whether it is pertaining to a male or female, man or animal, but also the purpose or function of the grand scheme of the Most High's divine order for all things in existence. But it still holds true in accordance with the logic of the original Hebrew language, which is the holy tongue spoken by God when he spoke everything into existence from nothingness and contrived every imaginable concept. Love, hate, jealousy, fear, all of these things, nurturing, growth, all of these things are the concepts that God created, and everything has a masculine and feminine duty and purpose. That God alone established when he created all living things by their elements and their purposes, and were conducted to be in perfect harmony with the laws of reproduction and the natural processes of cause and effect, fine-tuned by his will, meaning God set up everything according to his will, and the purposes of everything will be in accordance with the perfect and divine law that he gave us. All things are subject to the law of cause and effect. Everything. You do something, you're going to get a result. Every single thing corresponding to his name when in its own masculine and feminine being as intended by the Creator. I'm going to skip some of this stuff because we're pressed for time. Both masculine and feminine, unique in their own right. Here's a good one. Maintaining balance in both the physical and the spiritual realms. Adam is the masculine form of Adama, which is feminine, both in nature and grammatical gender, the earth. Thus, by definition, man is the masculine form of the earth, both of whom were made of the same exact elements, save the breath of life, directly from the mouth of the Most High. This Adam, whose body was formed from Adama, when God formed man from the dust of the ground, being made a living soul, when he breathed into his nostrils, the Nishmat Chaim, which translates to the breath of lives, because he only breathed one life, and it was translated through DNA for everybody's life that came after them. And that's why in Hebrew it's called Nishmat Chaim, the breath of lives. Possesses both the masculine and feminine. Men were created both possessing masculine and feminine. Hence, he was magnificently made with both the X and Y chromosomes. This was done through the careful consideration. If you know anything about the makeup of man, according to what God revealed to scientists, the Y chromosome is the male chromosome, the X chromosome is the female chromosome. Every male has an X and a Y, every female has 2 X chromosomes, but we all only have 2. This was done through careful consideration by divine design for the preordained intent that God would later bring forth the woman from his rib. He can't bring forth something feminine from something that didn't have femininity in it. That's not saying that Adam was feminine. It's saying that we were created possessing everything in us, just as God does. A single bone containing all cells that form the human body. A bar removed from the cage that protects the two most vital organs in his body. The rib cage protects the heart, wherewith the blood, which is the life, is pumped throughout the human body. And the lungs, the very housing for the precious breath of life. It is in no coincidence that once removed a bar from the cage that protects his life, that he would be freed from his loneliness. For man who is one with all of creation was not meant to live alone. For it is not good that man should be alone, said the Creator. I will make him an help like unto his opposite, to complement him. For loneliness is a prison, and therefore once removed from his rib cage, he was freed from it. When the rib, being a vital part of his defense, okay, because the woman is also his defense, the key to his freedom from solitude, the key to his freedom from being alone, was returned to him as a woman complementary to complete him, introducing solidarity, which is the act of unity as one, making him whole. Not once again, but for the first time, he was complete. For they were and are truly one, the only two to ever exist in the history of the world who are of the same DNA, making them entirely one. There's a lot more to this paper, to this writings, but I'm going to cut it right there. Because if that doesn't tell us how responsible we are, just as it is a parent's job to protect and provide and to guide and to make the children feel safe and secure, because the children came from them, oh man, we should also consider in the same regard that it is our job to protect and provide and to make your woman feel safe and secure and to care for and to love her because she came from you. She is a part of you. And if you don't care to take care of your own body and your own soul, if you think that's what you're doing the law for, right? To take care of your own soul, to ensure that you're coming back in the quickening, why wouldn't you want the same for something that came from you? Why won't you extend that love on how to protect her, how to save her from herself? Also, how to save yourself from yourself. And now you work on yourself and show her how to work on herself by being the living, walking example. And when she's wrong, give her a pass. Because maybe you ain't guide her right. When she's wrong and you think to condemn her, think about if God ever held you and condemned you and forsook you every time you made a mistake or did something wrong. Because you are flesh of a lesser understanding than him, just as your wife is of a lesser understanding than you. And I'm going to say this to end it off. God is going to treat you the way you treat your wife. Your household is going to treat you the way you treat God, because he is the bridegroom of what I read in this book, and we are the bride, O men. And you are the bridegroom, and your wife is the bride. And we are also his children. So your wife and your children will treat you the way you treat God, and that's God showing you a mirror of yourself. And until you recognize that and hold yourself accountable and shape up your ways and show some mercy to her like God did to you, you're just cutting off your own right hand. You're just throwing away your own rib cage that's protecting your heart and your breath of life. If you don't look at it that way, you got some more reflection to do. I hope that everybody was inspired by the words of the Most High God, and that we'll all take these principles that we learn from the law and the judgments of God and step outside of ourselves to reflect and demand only of ourselves and not another. Is there anything that anybody wants to ask? Any questions? Any opposing opinions to anything that I said today? Anybody want to challenge something I said or bring up some verses to show where I might have spoken out of my own mind? Because I did some research, and I'm pretty sure that what I'm saying is backed by the book. Besides, I learned more from watching my teacher walk than anything that he ever taught me out of his mouth. And anybody that ever knows and saw our relationship could tell you that I hung around him a lot, and he talked to me a lot. And I learned more from watching the way he walked and the way he lived in his house. And everything wasn't always peaches and cream, but at a certain point in his maturity and understanding, he humbled himself before God, and he gave his wife the leeway. And he spoke to her heart, as it says in Judges chapter 19, which I wanted to touch on today, but we don't have enough time. But you've heard Chief Shammah bring it before, where the Levite spoke, it says, kindly to her in English, but he said spoke to her heart, according to, in regards to her heart, because he cared for her, because he loved her, even though she ran off from him. If those aren't lessons, I don't know. It didn't turn out good for her. That didn't stop him from turning and doing his job as a righteous man, considering her. And I watched my teacher do it, and ain't none of us better than him. So I say that to say this. I hope that we will all humble ourselves, turn from our evil ways, and walk upright before the Most High our God. I bid you have the ancient tongue of our forefathers. Shabbat shalom lekan.
Shabbat shalom lekan.
Any questions, comments concerning the teachings? And was everybody able to? Do we have any more hiccups in the stream since we started the new live? I just want to know because I can't see it from my end if I'm freezing. I didn't get any warnings, but you guys saw it before I did last time. Everything good? No. Yes, I am. you guys are joke. All right. Okay. All right. Same next week, same time, and I encourage everybody to read and go over the chapters that we bring in teachings every week. And if you have any questions, there's an email on this channel. There's an email on the other channel. And you guys can send your questions to email, or you can wait until Shabbat and put them in the chat, and we'll address them at the end of teachings. All a part of the leadership council. Where are? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm seeing a question that Asher wrote. Mariah Asher. I'm sorry. Are you all a part of the leadership council where you all deal with matters like this? We are, myself and my brothers, Chief Mikael and Chief Shammah, were appointed as teachers of Bnei Zakin Maccabees Hebrew congregation, the house of Chief Eleazar. So as this congregation, we would be the men that we would hope the people of the congregation would feel comfortable to in presenting cases where we could act as judges according to what we read in the law. In no case, unlike what you might have heard in other camps, would we ever overstep the boundaries of the law and enforce a judgment that was not in accordance with the Torah. And we will not step into, like, for instance, as I mentioned earlier, none of us could write a bill of divorce for anybody, even though you might have heard that being done in other congregations. That's a violation of law, because God only give that right to the husband. But I have watched my teacher counsel marriages, and he used to allow me and ask the two parties, the husband and wife, if it was okay if I be present. Sometimes my brothers were there as well, Chief Mikael and Chief Shammah. In certain cases, sometimes only one of us was present. But I learned a lot from watching that, and he never included his own opinion. He never included his own emotions. If he thought the husband was wrong and it made him angry, he wouldn't go condemn the husband and do something outside of the law as part of a judgment to, punish the husband. No, if anything, we would talk to him and counsel him according to law. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Most of the time, my teachers stuck up for the woman, even if it was the wives of his own sons. And they'll tell you, my father would even correct me concerning my own wife, and he wouldn't even side with me, and he's my father. I watched it, you know. If his daughters were wrong in their marriages, he would rebuke them. He was a fair and just man, and he taught us to be just in all things in accordance with the law and not involve our feelings and emotions when it comes to judgment. And also that we cannot execute the judgments that are not written in this book. We do not have the authority to add on to God's judgments. And certain things that the priest might have been able to do, we can't do today. So therefore, after that, it would be left to counsel. And he would counsel both parties, sort of like a marriage counselor, but using the law and the principles of God. Are you okay? Are you being distracted? He would use the principles of what the law teaches us to counsel the two parties, the male and the female, condemning who was ever wrong and coming up with examples from the book on how we're supposed to treat each other as a husband and a wife. And I also wanted to reiterate that when you love your neighbor as yourself, that includes your wife. Don't think that she's not included in the category of your neighbor. You know, your children also. I think that's where we go wrong. We forget that the law starts within your own home first. And you have to have a heart for them. It's not just your job to rebuke and correct and straighten them out and regulate. It's our job to care for them, to guide them, to nurture them, to protect them, to make them feel safe. If they can't come talk to us, then we're not making them feel safe. It's not their fault, it's ours. I hope I answered that, Mariah. If you have anything that you want to bring to us as a council, if you would confide in us to appoint us as your counselors, we would be happy to offer counsel according to the book. I know I could speak for both of my brothers, Chief Mikael and Chief Shama, in this regard. And if something is too high for us, then we will tell you to pray and ask God for a sign. And we're not going to try to take matters into our own hands and tell you something that's not written in the judgments. So I hope that helps. And that door is open to anybody. If my brothers are not available, I'm available. If I'm not available, reach out to one of them. I'm going to go ahead and type my email in the chat right now. I know it's not going to let me type my whole email, but this is my email with @Gmail after it. Zakaria.israel@gmail.com. If you have any questions in regards to law, is it okay if I allow somebody else to? I don't know if they're probably saying Minkat by now. I know my brothers are on time with Minkat, you know, saying up the prayers, but I will check next week if it's okay if my brothers, Chief Mikael and Chief Shama, want to allow questions to come to their email, but you have mine in the meantime. All right, my people, it's all love, and I'll see you next week. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.